All right, email is a really tough topic to tackle in 30 minutes, so this is going to be lightning round, everything-ish you want to know about email in under 30 minutes. Okay, let's start here. People love email. This is still a channel where we have to be able to play because people consistently tell us that this is a channel where they want to hear from us. Probably one of the best studies that has reinforced this idea comes out of Adobe. Every single year they do their consumer insight study, and what we've seen consistently for the last 5 years, that even though in the growth of social media and apps and text messaging has continued to grow, email is still the preferred channel where people want to receive branded communications by almost a twofold, exponentially better differential than anything else that they self-report. And comparatively to last year, which saw this number at about 48%, it's jumped a full 21 points in just over a year in terms of their preference for being in this channel. What's driving that? Probably because of what's happening in social media the last 2 years largely. But this is still a channel where they say, yes, I want to receive branded communication from companies in. So that's the first part of why this is important. Number two is this idea that email delivers solid ROI still. When we look across any research study, whether it's in the EU, globally, or here in the United States, we see these themes reinforced over and over and over again. Regardless of what industry we're in, we consistently see email, the email channel, rated as good or an excellent driver of ROI in our organizations. Such was the case for this data from GetResponse, which broke this out industry and industry across a global set of data just this past year. Regardless of where we look, these are the data points we see globally, from industry to industry. This is a data point that comes out from e-consultancy in the EU. Again, rating email as the excellent or most excellent, like a Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure, if you will, but excellent driver of email. So we've got one reason is that people still love it. Number two is that it consistently delivers positive ROI for our organizations. Number three is it's vitally becoming a place that assists other channels as well. When we think about the profiles that we can build around users, it largely starts with an email address. When you're looking at Marketo or Salesforce Marketing Cloud or MailChimp or any one of the major platforms that are out there, they are built around a unique identifier that is email. And because of that, we've seen email become an integration point for other places that we can touch customers, like with Facebook ads. So you've seen Facebook integrate both first-party and third-party data so that we can leverage that email address to create an interesting experience beyond the inbox based on how users are interacting with our email campaigns as well. Within Facebook, you can take your opt-in or opt-out lists, target those users based on the behaviors that they're having. Are they opening? Are they clicking? What products, what emails are they opening? And then deliver ads to those users after the fact. And what we found and what Salesforce has reinforced with this research is that they are more likely to purchase when we create integrations across those channels. So when someone is an email subscriber and they open, when we consistently touch that user outside of the inbox based on those behaviors, they're more likely to click and take the conversion action that we want them to take. The one other thing that's happening within the email industry is that our context is evolving. Over the last 10 years, one key thing has happened. We are no longer strapped to our desks, meaning a couple of things. That tried and true time of day delivery that we all mentioned when someone would ask the generic email question, what's the best time of day to send an email campaign? It used to be Tuesday, Thursday at 9:30 a.m. local, right? Because we knew people were chained to their desks. Simply not the case anymore because we are reading email all day in very strange places and at all different moments of our day as we're on the go. The context of where people read those campaigns is rapidly changing away from being stuck at a desk and to a mouse and keyboard and largely in the devices that we carry in our pockets day in and day out. And because of that, what's been interesting is we thought for a long, long time, because they're reading on a smaller screen, that they wouldn't be spending as much time on our campaigns. What the data over the last 4 or 5 years suggests is completely the opposite, is that mobile users actually spend more time with our campaigns than they do. So people, even though that they've got less time, they're still spending time in their inbox. It's still a channel where people consistently, where it delivers ROI for our organizations. They still tell us they love it, and they're spending more time in these newer devices and newer platforms that they're in. What's also interesting is that because the context is changing, we read email in really strange places and at really odd times of day, like really, really, really strange and weird places. This data also came out of that Adobe Consumer Insight study, and it's been reflected for the past 5 years over and over and over again. They asked specifically, where do you spend time when you're in your inbox? You will note these are all self-reported answers. We start at the top. People have a second screen viewing experience, right? They're watching Scandal or Netflix and chilling, and they're in their inbox. While they're in bed, right? Because the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is not roll over and hug your spouse or your partner or kiss your child and tell them you love them or pet the dog. You turn off your alarm on your phone, and then you see the 14,000 emails that your boss sent to you from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. because they're nuts. While on vacation, 43% of us, 46% of us self-report that when we're on the beach having a beer on vacation, we don't get out of our inbox. And then things get really fun while on the bathroom. And if you don't believe this metric, 43%, then you just need to go into any public restroom and listen to the conversations that half the people are having when they're going to the toilet, because it happens every single day. And it gets even worse while working out. I hate these people. If you're running or on the stair climber or whatever you're doing in the gym and you can actually, cognitively deal with answering an email, I just don't like you. You're just too talented. While driving, probably even worse than texting. And the last one really gets me, while at a formal ceremony. So we're at Sunday at church, quinceañera, bat mitzvah, wedding, and we're still in our inboxes. We are addicted to those inboxes. But we got some problems, because for all that addiction, and because this channel is still loved by consumers, or at least a preferred channel where they prefer to hear from us, and it still delivers excellent ROI and allows us to do some deep integration points with other channels, we deliver some really crazy things inside the inbox. I call this example, you just used half the screen. So take your marketer hat on and put your normal human being hat on and go with me on the journey of what a normal human being is going to consume when they see this email campaign. So they say, Hallmark, okay, I'm in. Watch Have a Little Faith, cool. Then they open the email and they see this. What is this blue text? Oh, no, view from mobile. I'm in mobile. View as web page. Why would I do that? Oh, please add me to your address book. Why would I ever add you to my address book? Is that a Facebook logo? Can't even read that brown thing. Oh, Lawrence Fishburne. You think I'm joking, but you just used half the screen for absolute nonsense. Happy holidays. Nailed it. Woo. If you're doing columns, please stop. No one pinches and zooms to deal with columns on an email campaign. At all. You know what someone does when they see pinch and zoom? Goodbye, delete. Even worse, mark as spam. Instant unsubscribe. If we're going to do personalization, we really got to get good at making sure that we're testing our personalization efforts. You see this example on the left-hand side from Red Robin, who sent out an email to 14.5 million subscribers. And you will note the subject line, #global.firstname, ##. 50% off just for you. Woo. You know what's great about that example is I put it in 7 minutes before this presentation in Denver. Do you know who's based in Denver? Red Robin. Do you know who's in my presentation in Denver? The CMO of Red Robin, who didn't know that this had happened. It also happens to the best of us. This is marketing profs on your right-hand side. Hey there, percentage, member, name, first, percentage. Oh man, we got to watch those merge tags if we're going to do some personalization. I don't know if you clicked on a subscription preferences center in the last decade, but we do a pretty bad job of making them better. Like, put your normal human being hat on and think about where someone is when they're on your subscription preferences page. They're probably mad at you. They probably want to unsubscribe, so you should probably give them a good experience as a part of this unsubscribe. Not this one, which is number one, completely unbranded, and I wouldn't even know that I'd actually clicked on your subscription preferences center. But even worse, look at the options that we're giving our customers. Number one is unsubscribe me from the selected lists. You will know that the first list is called New List. The next one is keep me subscribed, or unsubscribe me from all my current lists, and you're like, I'm in multiple? But look at the third, never email me again. The option that we don't want people to check is the easiest option to understand. Okay, if you're going to do personalization, I would like you to be less creepy. Unlike Ticketmaster. Don't be like Ticketmaster. This is an email they send out every single week to anybody that's ever bought a Ticketmaster ticket. Michael, your personalized event lineup, and then look at what I get. San Diego Gay Men's Chorus, The Book of Mormon, Billy Elliot the Musical, The Little Mermaid, Diana Krall, the Queen Adina. I'm like, I know you know me well, but really? Wow. Now again, I try to not make this stuff up, and if you were in my session a few minutes ago, you already saw this example, but it works here too. Oh, where did it go? Oh, I pulled out the slide. Well, the email would read here as it says, the subject line says, my baby died after being left in a hot car. The pre-header says, from crispy bacon to tender roast, here are our 15 best pork recipes from todaysparent.com. That's a parent for you. Yeah, you definitely shouldn't do that. Okay, this is from my good friend Ann Hanley. So Ann posted this on Facebook a couple days ago. This is the hashtag I've emailed you 5 times, go away, I don't care example. So Ann put up, a real email I got this morning, subject line, are you okay? And my response, I'm sure he's a nice guy, I was just in a mood. 732 reactions, 200 comments, 51 shares. This is what she received. If you can't read this in the back, I'll take care of it for you. It says, hey, Ann, I wanted to drop by your inbox one last time because I see a tremendous opportunity for marketing profs to save some serious time when it comes to writing high-quality blog posts with our service. First problem, marketing profs writes high-quality blog posts. Then it gets even funner, more fun. I'm going to assume that you're not dead or kidnapped. Are you in prison? Oh, Lord. If I don't hear back from you, blah, 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 blah. If you're in jail, don't worry, I'll post bail for you. Just let me know where the best way to connect with you so I know where to send the money. Winky face. P.S. If indeed it still makes sense to connect with you, then just let me know a couple of times at work and I'll give you a call. So Ann emailed him back, of course, as one should do. In all caps, dear name redacted. This email is to inform you that Ann Hanley, inmate number 874992, and she goes on, she's being held without pending bail for pending trial for choking a salesperson for sending unsolicited mail. She is suspected of using her bare hands, although the weapon of choice might also have been a string of emails that she wove together and used as a rope about the victim's neck. She can't respond personally as her one phone call was to the Reverend Fight Brother Kofi of Nigeria, who promised her $50 million in exchange for assistance with a bank transfer. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Mr. Anthony Whale, Deputy Director and Tuesday Afternoons Arts and Crafts Leader, Tri-County Women's Correctional Facility. Again, if you make people pinch and zoom on anything, they are not going to do it, such as the case is here. They are not going to scroll through your campaign and get to these tiny 6-point font that you have sent them. It's just too much work. I do not want to split the skin that is between my thumb and my forefinger just to read your content. We don't want to talk to you, but we really do. Oh, note the from name. Do not reply at. People want to talk to brands. Don't put in a from name that is unfriendly, like do not reply at. It also can have detrimental effects on deliverability into the inbox. Yet there are literally hundreds of brands that do this every single day. Oh yeah, I challenge you to find the opt-out link. Oh, it's there. You just got to hunt. Woo. Okay. Also, I'd like any e-commerce retailer to realize you are not the NSA. So if you are doing cart abandonment emails, I don't want them to read like this. We saw you looking. We know that you've been thinking about it. You know, and just probably think of the context before you send an email campaign. So this is the email that went out from the lead sponsor of the Boston Marathon after the 2016 race. And the subject line says, congrats, you survived the Boston Marathon. So we do some really bad things when it comes to things in the inbox. And because of this, we've basically done what Don Norman, who's the father of interaction design, really said at a conference. This is that email is basically the office memo turned cancerous and extended to everyday home and life. So we have got to get better. So how do we get better? It starts here. Because anything that I'm going to tell you after this matters, but unless you're going to get into the inbox, you've got to do that first. And to get into the inbox, you've got to make sure you're authenticated. And too often I see brands that are completely unauthenticated senders getting into spam simply because they have not authenticated their domain. Because we have to prove who we are to have access to those inboxes. How do we do that? We got to make sure that we've got some authentication protocols in place. This is the basic gist of how an email gets into the inbox. At step 2 is where you see these authentication protocols come into place. What authentication protocols do is this, is they say to your ISP, the internet service provider, you are the brand who you say you are. So I am Coca-Cola, or I am Wells Fargo, or I am Sprint. How do you do this? 4 things that matter. Your SPF record, your sender policy framework, your DKIM record, domain keys identified mail, your sender ID, and your DMARC policy. This is this SPF, or sender policy framework. It is the gold standard. At a minimum, you need to have an SPF record in place to make sure that you're getting into the inbox. The second most important authentication protocol is your domain keys identified mail, or DKIM record. Both of these are simple text strings that just go on your DNS host account with GoDaddy or Bluehost or Namecheap, whatever it is. The third one is sender ID, still important for Yahoo, AOL, and Verizon email addresses. Yes, there are still people reading email on those email addresses, contrary to popular belief. Your DMARC policy for my high-volume senders in the room. If you're doing over 50,000 or more emails a week, you need to have a DMARC policy in place to ensure that you're getting your volume access into the inbox. So authentication matters just to make sure we get into the inbox. But once we get into the inbox, what else do we have to care about? First thing is design, and this is this idea that ubiquity matters. We are in an era where the easiest wins, where people don't have a lot of time, but they say email is really important to them and they still use it. And we're in an era where people, again, read email in very different contexts. So we've got to make sure that we can meet them in the medium that they're in. From names matter quite a bit these days. It is the number one reason. 74% of people say this is the reason why they open an email campaign, the from names. And I see a lot of organizations never experiment with anything but their organizational name. If you're a nonprofit, or if you're building a relationship with an account-based organization or a salesperson, you should be experimenting with things with automation flows and or your campaigns that start with a personal individual that's inside the organization that maybe is building that relationship. The Lab Theater in New York does this really well. Mimi O'Donnell is their fundraising director. Their campaigns for fundraising come from Mimi. Drift has done this really well as too. They've experimented with literally millions and millions of email campaigns to find out that when they use a first name from name of organization, it results in a 20% more higher open rate than when they just use the word drift in their from name. So we've got to make sure we're experimenting with different from names that could work for our organization. Next, again, gone are the days where we can have multi-column layouts. Unless you're on some sort of widescreen and you're doing responsive design and tailoring for those screens, fine. But within a mobile context, we need to design for what I call a single column or skinny layout. Here are some great examples from Tommy John. Here's one from the Kennedy Center. Oh, I went too fast there. There we go. Kennedy Center has hundreds of events of years, but you can scroll through and get everything that you would need to know about the Kennedy Center. From events, easy to click through, nice big images. Remember that pinch and zoom example that I showed you with the emoji? This is the redesigned example of that theater in LA, the Brick Theater. You can scroll through all of that content much easier than having to pinch and zoom. Here's a great example from Envision on their monthly newsletter. We can still use text, but it's got to be appropriately sized. It's got to have a lot of contrast on it. Speaking of text and buttons and fonts, we'll start here. These are the best practices. These are not my best practices. This is what Apple and Litmus, who are arguably probably the leaders in designing for different interactions on screens, especially with an email. Headlines, a minimum of 30 pixels. That is 30 pixels right there at the top, how to write great email copy. Body copy, a minimum of 16 pixels. That's that middle section right there. Just remember that iOS chooses to upsize your fonts when anytime, at any moment, if they're under 13. If they believe that the user needs to be able to read that, they will break your email design to make sure the fonts are large enough for the average human eye to read them at the average human arm length on these screens that they're developing. Buttons need to be a minimum of 44 points by 44 points. And please, for the love of all things holy, put some white space around your buttons so those of us with big hands or fat fingers can just get through to your content. Some great examples of fonts and buttons. I love this one from BounceX and Shopify. This is a webinar email. First thing I'll point out, above the fold content, they have the call to action right at the fold. So if I want to get into this webinar, I don't have to scroll. So for the casual glancer that wants to know the content here, I can click through right away. But then they reinforce that call to action as you get lower down the email with an additional call to action around RSVPing for the webinar. So if someone is more of a consumer of that content and wants to scroll through and understand, you're answering two different audiences' needs. Also note the color changes. The green draws the user into the selection that that the brand actually wants you to click. Here's a beautiful example from Starbucks. These are contextual buttons. Whenever I take a screenshot or I look for something I see that I want to either share that's a good or bad example in these sessions, I always take the desktop and the mobile version, and I was blown away when I noticed the difference between these two. On desktop, the call to action is delicious details, because you're probably in a browsing behavior when you're in a webmail or desktop. But when you open that same campaign right within a smartphone, it is this one, order now, right? And that takes you right into the Starbucks app. That's one line of code that creates all the difference. It's contextually relevant for the medium that the individual is in. Understand that we have to get to the point. The average reader, 50% of our readers aggregately spend more than 8 seconds on an email campaign. The other 50% spend less than 8 seconds. And half of that 50% spend less than 2 seconds on our campaigns. We have got to get to the point in our campaigns. Whatever message you're trying to convey, you've got to do it as quickly as possible. Some great examples here from Brilliant on the left-hand side. Go green before they're gone. I don't need to scroll through that email to know exactly what Brilliant wants me to do. Lululemon, get, run, go. I don't need to consume any more content than what's above the fold. Or on this right-hand side here, Handy, they're having a one-day flash sale. All that content is above the fold. Compare that to the Hallmark example that I showed you before, right? You're giving the user exactly what you would like them to do. Let images do the talking. We are in an era where the prettiest wins. This is a great example from Starbucks of allowing really beautiful imagery to come to life within an email design. And again, simple calls to action, appropriately sized buttons. If you need some inspiration around this idea, there's a really great website called reallygoodemails.com. I love this little menu drop down on the left-hand side. You can get different types of emails you're sending, from B2B to different industries, to welcome series, to activation series. And there's some beautiful examples that are curated by a few email strategists around the world. Subject lines, they matter quite a lot. Right after your from name, the number 2 reason why people open your email campaigns is because of the subject line that you use. And let me dispel one myth right now, and this is this idea that size doesn't matter. Phrasee has spent the last decade arguing this point, and they published a study about 6 months ago. They looked at the last 15 years of research on subject line length, and what they found is it accounts for only a 0.01% variance of email open rates. Every single email strategy session that I've ever been in for years and years and years said your subject line length matters. It does not. What they found is 4 key things that matter. Sentiment, your words choice matters more than anything. The emotion you convey, the words that you use matter more than the length of the subject line. Emojis, they make good subject lines better. They make bad subject lines bad. So your emojis have got to be relevant to the context or the content that's within your email campaign. Diversity, different strokes for different folks. Not all of your personas talk the same. Not all of your subscribers talk the same. The way that my mom might say something, she's 62 and retired, is very different than maybe a 19-year-old who's buying the same product. The 19-year-old will say shook, and my mom would say surprised, right? It's different words for different types of people. And sophistication, it has to be simple. The more simple you can convey a message in a subject line, the more important, the more easily that someone can consume that subject line, the better. So it is not about length. Is it about sentiment, sophistication, diversity, and leveraging good emojis for the content of the email campaign? Interactivity. Gone are the days when we can just have flat JPEGs and text, or flat PNGs or SVGs or whatever image format you're using. We can do some really interesting things with interactivity. We can bake in real-time and conversational from social right within an email campaign. This was done from Litmus for an event that they did. This is a hashtag thread of conversations happening right within an email campaign. It's 64 lines of code. It works across approximately about 88% of devices. Take that to the next level and do some interactive content inside your email campaigns. This is a quiz right within an email campaign that has yes and no answers, that gives you actual answer verification as you take the quiz. And at the end of the quiz, you can find out if you've won a ticket to this particular event, and you don't have to reload the email campaign. This is 128 lines of code. It worked 100% across all platforms except Litmus Notes, unfortunately. But it worked across Outlook, so winning. GIFs. Utilize GIFs, really, really interesting, because people want to feel a little bit of a different experience. They want to see something that gets their eyes pleased and smiling. Some good examples here from Core Power on the left-hand side. I'll say that if you're going to use a GIF, it's got to be relevant to the organization or the content that you're sharing. So just like you'll see here, Core Power rolling out that red carpet. Tokyo Bike showing off their kids' bike. Rather than having to show you individual images of all the colors, showing off those colors. Now you'll recall that toasted coconut cold brew example that I showed you earlier. This is the reason why I initially took this screenshot. But what I loved about this particular use of a GIF, reinforcing that green ring that's around Starbucks cups, is that it sat right at the fold of the email content. So your eyes were drawn to pull down through the content. So utilizing a GIF to get people to read farther into the content is a really good idea. They also work for B2B too. Look at Box, showing off how to run better meetings right within the platform. Or Asana, showing off a feature set. Or this is Andrew at Alexander Levy at Curata. This is an email that you see go out after every single trade show or event, right? Thanks for coming. We really appreciate you being there. Sell, sell, sell. You should call us, buy our product, yada, yada, yada. But they include a picture of the crazy guy in the demo booth, right? It's just a wee bit different. Gets people to actually pay attention. Nordstrom's is taking this to a whole different level and actually baking in full microsite experiences right within their email campaigns. So you can see, if I don't like any of this email content and I don't want to really deal with any of it, then they've got their hamburger menu at the top, and I can actually get to any part of their website right within the email campaign. Chad White at Litmus, who was formerly at Salesforce and ExactTarget, calls this the mailable microsite, that we're really starting to see this convergence of the web and the inbox coming together. Personalization and automation. These are the really tough ones, but I'm going to blast through them. I know they take time. You've got to develop personas and subscriber groups and a ton of things, but you can do some really interesting things like doing first-name personalization and taking that to a whole new level. This is a great brand that's out of San Francisco, a hippy-dippy deodorant natural brand called Native. They use first-name and last-name personalization to the hilt. You'll note right up front, Luis, you rock. It was just another mundane day at our office when suddenly Jackie took a look at her computer, her eyes widened, we did it, she exclaimed. We got an order from Luis Selgas. Laura jumped out of her chair and ran to Jackie's desk. She didn't even read the entire email. She just saw Luis and started screaming in delight. OMG, Laura shouted, this is real. We got an order from Luis. So we can do things with first-name personalization. We also have to understand that celebrating the user is okay. Right after the welcome series, which is the most important email campaign that we'll talk about in a second, the birthday or something that celebrates the user is the second most important campaign because people read it. They love being celebrated. Dr. Rieger, who's my ophthalmologist, I've had a couple conversations with him. They send 3 emails a year in their organization. Annual reminder, birthday, winter holidays, thanks for being a customer. The one that generates the most calls for an additional exam, which means real dollars for their team, not the annual exam, not the Christmas card, the birthday email, by a 10-fold percentage. You can also do this for B2B where you celebrate the user using the platform. Maybe it's how many times they've been on the platform. Maybe it's a threshold of spending that they've done. Maybe it's being a customer for 3 months or 6 months or a year. We can create these moments regardless if this is a consumer brand or not. Purchase intent, or what we like to call cart abandonment emails, which I think cart abandonment is like, ugh. Amazon does this really well, obviously. If you're a Prime member and you're shopping and you don't put something in your cart, or you do, they'll hit you back based on what your historical buying cycle looks like. Another great example of this on the right-hand side from Bonobos. You put something in your cart, you get distracted. Bonobos will send you an email about 24 minutes after you've opened that because that's the exact time they feel like someone's in the moment to convert, and it gives you, hey, did you forget something, with a number of items that are in your briefcase or what they call their cart. We can do purchase history. If we have data on users, then we should use it to create calls to actions that are way more relevant to them. Bonobos does this really well. You will note the call to action on the button. It's very small here, but it's impactful, and it gets at an insight for their brand. It says shop size large. Bonobos knows that this user has only bought large shirts. So rather than having someone having to click through and then put their size and add another step, they simply make that call to action specific to that user. We can do things from weather. There's a reason why IBM folded weather.com into Watson. It's not only beneficial for supply chain and logistics and anything that organizations can do with Watson, but it can also matter from a perspective of ensuring that when we send a campaign to, say, San Diego, where it's 72 and sunny all the time, and to New York in the middle of winter, that they will see different content because of the weather or seasonality that they're having within those geographic areas. Value. One of the things I would love to see more organizations do is convey more value in your campaigns. This is X.ai. Every single month, we pay $45 to have access to this platform, which is a pretty hefty fee on a per user, per month basis. But once a week, we get an email back from their team that's fully automated on the back end, and it says, "Good morning, Michael. Here's a quick summary of the work that I did for you last week, and I can happily say that there are no outstanding tasks. I scheduled 2 meetings for you last week, saving you over 30 minutes of email ping pong." So communicating the value that your organization brings for the dollars that people spend is another way that you can leverage automation and triggers really effectively. Customer data. Again, this idea of Nest and using customer data. As you get through on your monthly Nest report, you see an actual, this is data that's coming from any product within your home. My battery's okay, the Wi-Fi's okay, I've had no alerts, I don't need to pay attention to that product right now. Leveraging the customer data to tell the user exactly what's happening within their home right within the inbox. Product adoption. Proactive does this super well. They know that if someone uses their product for 6 weeks, they're more than likely to use it for 6 months or more. So getting people to use it for the first 6 weeks is vitally important. So over the course of that first 6 weeks, they tell you what to experience with what your skin is going to experience every single week. You're going to feeling unclogged pores. Your skin might be a little oily this week. It might be a little drier this week, just so that they can get you to that 6-week threshold. Transactional. This is probably one of my favorite examples. One of the things that I think a lot of e-commerce retailers forget about is those transactional campaigns, the ones that are order confirmations, shipping confirmations, returns, and exchanges. It's important to pay attention to these because they are read 8 times more likely than your campaigns that you're sending out from a branding or marketing perspective. Now, what I love about what Bonobos does is they give people more in these transactional emails. So not only do you get your order confirmation, but you get this little link that says, while you wait for your shipment, enjoy a cat who loves boxes. And you click over to YouTube and you've got Maru the cat. And Maru just jumps into boxes. He's just a freakazoid of a cat. The owner puts a camera and a box out and he goes for the box. And it's just 1 minute and 30 seconds of amazing pleasure. Now listen, this has nothing to do with Bonobos, but you better believe I'm going to open every transactional email from them, and I'm going to open any one of their future campaigns because I want to see the Easter egg. I want to know if there's something in there that communicates this sort of amount of funny. Because if it's not Maru the cat, it could be that I could buy a $2,500 mini horse from North Carolina. Always say hello because it's important. It's what your mother told you, and it's what Adele tells us to do. Oh, bless me, some Adele fans in the room. Why is this important? Because 43% of companies don't send a welcome series, and it baffles me because these are the open and transactional rates that we see them. 4 times higher open rate, 5 times higher click-through rate, 33% increase in long-term customer engagement. And when we send them right away, we have a 10 times higher, more transactional rate than if we batch them within a minute later. Sending that welcome series as soon as someone subscribes is vitally important to make sure you get the metrics you're looking for. Okay, because I'm running out of time here, I'll just let you know these slides are going to be available for you. There's 2 additional sections in here on this idea of being human. I'll say this, we've got to communicate like we understand that there is someone on the end of that experience that we want to talk to. Along with being human, we've also got to test like a scientist, and there are 5 different tests in here that you may or may not be testing within your organizations. Things like changing automation campaigns, focusing on tests that actually move your needle. If you're looking for open rates, then you should focus on from name tests and subject line tests, not the content in the email. If you care about conversions, then you're caring about optimizing and testing the content. Test different audience segments that are similar and different. Just because you take a test doesn't mean it applies to your entire subscription database. You've got to localize those tests to understand how they're impacting subscribers. Also, make sure that you are testing your active subscribers and your inactive subscribers in different ways. I see a lot of companies that just do a test on 5 or 10% of their global subscription list when they have no idea if those individuals that are in that test are actually active subscribers, those people that pay attention on a regular basis, and those that don't. Those are very different segments of your subscription database. And then make sure you share results everywhere, because your results on maybe a different button color, a different call to action, could be very applicable to a team that's doing search or doing content development or doing your website design. Those are insights that got to be shared well outside your email team. So let's recap. Authentication. You've got to make sure you get into the inbox before we even work on anything else, because a lot of us are spending all this time and we're not even getting permission to get into the inbox. Number 2, design. Be ubiquitous. People are on the go doing really strange things, reading our email campaigns while they're on the toilet, in church, crazy stuff. We've got to meet them in those mediums. Subject lines. Get better or be boring. Remember, it's not about length. Diversity, sophistication, sentiment. Interactivity. Get jazzy or simply be boring. We can do really interesting things these days that go well beyond just a flat image and a piece of text that can get people engaged into the content on our campaigns. Automation and triggers, there's a ton that we can be doing to ensure that we're leveraging data points from a personalization perspective, but also ensuring we're delivering a really targeted experience for that end subscriber. Always say hello, it's because what your mother taught you to do, and it always results in incredible high open and conversion rates. And be human and act like a scientist. Thanks so much for your time.